You really think you can just take whatever you want without consequences? Officer Derek Collins muttered under his breath as he strode toward Monica Hayes, the fluorescent lights of the federal office flickering above, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to stretch across the polished tile floor. The hum of the air conditioning mingled with the low murmur of colleagues moving through the corridor, their footsteps echoing softly, but every sound seemed distant to Monica, whose eyes were locked on the polished handle of her briefcase. She walked with calm precision, each step deliberate, the slight click of her heels on the tile almost melodic, unnoticed by Derek, who was too focused on his own sense of authority. Around them, the office was a quiet storm. Papers shuffled, printers whirred, and monitors glowed. But Monica's presence cut through the mundane rhythm like a knife, drawing an almost imperceptible tension from those nearby. As Derek reached out, gesturing toward her bag, his voice carried the weight of assumed dominance, demanding access. Yet Monica remained still, composed, her hand resting lightly on the clasp of her briefcase, a subtle but firm anchor against the rising tide of confrontation. Her lips curved ever so slightly, not in amusement, but in controlled awareness, aware that every move, every glance, and every sound was part of a larger puzzle she had been piecing together long before this encounter. The hum of the office seemed to swell, almost echoing her heartbeat as her mind ran through the steps, protocols, and silent observations she had recorded over the past weeks, all meticulously documented, all quietly powerful. Derek's words became sharper, a hint of impatience seeping through his forced calm, his brow furrowed as he gestured more insistently, but Monica's gaze did not waver. Instead, it met his directly, steady and unwavering, silently communicating a balance of confidence and authority that no uniform or badge could overshadow. Around them, the subtle shift in atmosphere was palpable. Co-workers paused mid-step, coffee mugs clinked on desks, chairs scraped slightly against the tile, all forming a quiet symphony of anticipation that no one dared break. Monica adjusted the strap of her bag, her fingers brushing against the leather surface with careful grace, a seemingly small motion charged with intent, her calm exterior belying the strategic mind at work beneath. Every fiber of her being was attuned to the environment, the angle of the blinds letting in shafts of late afternoon sunlight, the soft click of Derek's keys as he typed commands, the almost imperceptible tension in the shoulders of colleagues who sensed, even if they could not articulate, that something beyond routine was unfolding. As Derek leaned slightly closer, his shadow falling across the floor toward her, Monica's eyes flicked momentarily to the badge clipped discreetly inside her briefcase, the symbol of authority and responsibility she had earned, yet which remained hidden until the precise moment she chose to reveal it. The office seemed to hold its breath with her, a suspended pause where every heartbeat, every footstep, every click of a pen was magnified in the suspended silence. Then, with the smallest of gestures, Monica shifted her weight, placing her hand firmly on the clasp and allowing a subtle, almost imperceptible tilt of her head that suggested both readiness and patience, signaling silently that the moment to assert her position, to reveal the depth of her authority, was approaching. Derek, unaware of the gravity behind her composed exterior, continued, his voice a mixture of command and barely concealed frustration, unaware that the balance of power in the room was about to pivot, that the calm woman before him was not just a bystander, but a participant with reach, insight, and authority that extended far beyond what his assumptions allowed him to see. In that stretched, suspended instant, Monica stood poised, a quiet force amid the hum of everyday office life, eyes calm, posture upright, radiating a controlled intensity that commanded attention without a word, proving that true power often lies not in noise or force, but in presence, patience, and an unwavering certainty that justice, when carefully and deliberately applied, will always find its way. The office corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, the pale fluorescent lights reflecting off the polished tile floor in muted, interrupted glimmers that danced with every subtle movement. Monica Hayes walked with measured steps, each one deliberate, her gaze scanning the room not with suspicion, but with an acute awareness of every nuance. The way a door clicked softly in the distance, the whisper of papers shifting on a desk, the quiet shuffle of a colleague's shoes. Derek Collins, still focused on the perceived slight, paced slightly to her left, his presence a looming shadow, yet entirely unaware of the careful balance of composure that Monica maintained. She adjusted her briefcase strap lightly over her shoulder, her fingers brushing against the smooth leather, a small but deliberate gesture that radiated confidence and poise, each movement precise, calculated, as if time itself slowed around her. The hum of the office seemed to swell with anticipation, each soft sound magnified, a subtle chorus of expectation that no one fully acknowledged yet all felt, the tension weaving through the air like invisible threads. Monica's eyes flicked momentarily toward the side of the room where a monitor displayed anonymized data, not in distraction but in assessment, absorbing details, patterns, inconsistencies, silently plotting the flow of information that would soon come into play. Derek's voice, low but insistent, cut through the quiet, his instructions and questions posed with an authority he assumed unchallenged. Yet Monica remained still, responding not with words but with calm, controlled body language that carried more command than any shouted order could convey. Around them, colleagues continued their tasks, their movements slower now, subconsciously influenced by the subtle exchange, the delicate power struggle that played out in silence, their awareness of Monica's presence sharpening, making each small action feel significant, weighted. Monica inhaled softly, a rhythm unnoticed by most but entirely conscious within, steadying her thoughts, reinforcing her patience, every detail of the environment cataloged and noted in her mind, each interaction mapped in potential consequences and opportunities. Derek stepped closer, his shadow stretching toward her, the subtle shift in his posture betraying a growing impatience. Yet Monica's calm did not falter. Her eyes met his, steady, unblinking, a silent assertion that the balance of influence was shifting imperceptibly with each measured breath she took. The click of her heels on the tile seemed almost louder now, echoing faintly, marking the passage of time, and each step was laden with deliberate intent, a rhythm of control that contrasted sharply with the hurried, uncalculated movements of Derek. Monica's hand brushed the clasp of her briefcase again, small, deliberate, signaling readiness, a contained energy coiled like a spring, poised to respond at precisely the right moment. The office air seemed thicker, a near tangible pressure, yet her posture remained upright, unwavering, a quiet force that commanded attention without a single word spoken. Every micro-expression, every slight shift in her stance, every glance conveyed more authority than any vocal demand could, as if the room itself recognized the presence of someone who operated on a plane above the ordinary, someone who understood patience and perception, someone whose calm and precision foretold the inevitable reveal that would realign expectations subtly and irrevocably, without the need for confrontation, without a single misstep. In the quiet moments between the hum of the electronics and the soft shuffle of papers, Monica allowed herself the briefest inner smile, acknowledging the meticulous preparation, the layers of observation and understanding that had led to this point, knowing that in moments the full weight of her position, her authority, and her insight would unfold, rendering assumptions irrelevant and shifting the room's perception. A silent assertion that true command is often invisible until revealed. The subtle hum of the fluorescent lights overhead created a soft, constant backdrop as Monica Hayes shifted her weight slightly, allowing her presence to settle firmly into the rhythm of the office. Each movement she made was deliberate, yet unassuming, her posture upright and confident, radiating a quiet authority that seemed to extend beyond the physical space around her. She glanced briefly at the digital clock mounted on the wall, the minute hand inching steadily forward, a silent reminder of time passing, each tick measured and precise. Derek Collins, unaware of the weight behind her calm demeanor, adjusted his stance, his hands hovering near the edge of her briefcase, his expression a mixture of impatience and determination, yet Monica's steady gaze met his without flinching, her eyes conveying a quiet, unwavering assurance. Around them, colleagues moved in subtle patterns, their actions casual on the surface yet laden with tension, aware in some unspoken way that a delicate balance was unfolding, a dance of observation and control. Monica's hand hovered over the clasp of her briefcase, her fingers brushing it lightly, a subtle signal of readiness, an unspoken message that she was aware, prepared, and entirely in control of the narrative yet to come. The soft click of a distant printer punctuated the air, followed by the gentle rustle of paper as someone rearranged files on a desk. Sounds that might have gone unnoticed in ordinary moments, but here contributed to a heightened awareness, each sound a note in a symphony of anticipation. Monica inhaled deeply, the rhythm steady and measured, her mind cataloging every detail. The angle of the light reflecting off polished surfaces, the slight tilt of Derek's head as he assessed her reaction, the almost imperceptible movements of colleagues who, knowingly or unknowingly, were witnesses to the subtle shifting of power in the room. Her gaze swept from the briefcase to the surrounding office space, noting the position of each workstation, the alignment of documents, the subtle cues of human behavior that revealed stress, curiosity, or anticipation, all feeding into her internal mapping of the unfolding scenario. Derek's voice, low and steady, carried over the quiet murmur of the office, attempting to assert dominance. Yet every word seemed to bounce off the calm exterior that Monica maintained, absorbed into the controlled environment she had cultivated. She allowed a brief, internal smile, not directed at him, but at the precision with which she had orchestrated her observations, each motion calculated, each second accounted for, knowing that the moment of revelation, the point at which the full weight of her authority would be recognized, was approaching. The soft hum of ventilation mixed with distant footsteps and quiet conversations, forming an understated tension that hung in the air, thick yet almost imperceptible, as if the office itself was holding its breath in anticipation of the inevitable realignment of power. Monica's eyes flicked back toward the briefcase one more time, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes without sound, signaling preparedness and intent, her calm unbroken, an anchor in the shifting dynamic. Every element, the lighting, the sound, the movement, the stillness, was a layer in a complex interplay of observation, patience, and controlled authority, setting the stage for the precise moment when assumptions would be challenged and the true measure of influence, of power exercised with discernment and foresight, would become undeniable to all present. The soft murmur of the office continued, punctuated by the occasional shuffle of papers and the low hum of computers, each sound contributing to a quiet tension that hung in the air like a suspended weight. Monica Hayes shifted her briefcase slightly, the leather smooth beneath her fingers, each touch deliberate and measured, signaling her awareness and intent without a word. Derek Collins leaned forward slightly, his hand brushing over the edge of the counter, his presence imposing yet unaware of the subtle currents of control that Monica exerted through her calm demeanor. The light from the windows filtered through partially closed blinds, casting thin, linear shadows across the floor that moved subtly as the day progressed, marking the passage of time with a rhythm that Monica observed carefully, cataloging each detail in her mind. She inhaled slowly, her chest rising and falling with a quiet steadiness, her posture unyielding, radiating a composed energy that contrasted sharply with Derek's increasingly restless movements. Around them, colleagues moved with muted precision, their steps and gestures contributing to an almost imperceptible chorus of anticipation, the office itself seeming to acknowledge the subtle power dynamic unfolding within it. Monica's eyes flicked to a nearby desk where a small stack of documents lay, slightly askew, yet perfectly positioned for immediate access, a testament to the quiet planning and foresight she had maintained over the preceding days. Derek's voice, steady yet tinged with impatience, cut across the soft backdrop of the office, his instructions and queries intended to assert dominance, yet they seemed to collide against Monica's composed exterior, absorbed and diffused by the quiet authority she projected through posture, gaze, and subtle, controlled gestures. The click of her heels on the polished tile marked her movements with deliberate rhythm, each sound resonating with intent, drawing attention not to disruption but to presence, each step a silent assertion of control within the shared space. Monica's hand rested lightly on the clasp of her briefcase, her fingers brushing it again with intentional subtlety, a small yet potent signal of readiness, of anticipation, of authority quietly held and measured. The office, alive with understated motion and sound, seemed to contract slightly around her, the energy focused, taut, almost tangible, as if every observer, aware or unaware, felt the significance of the moment, the impending shift that would reveal the depth of Monica's position and influence. She allowed herself a brief mental acknowledgment of the precision, the attention to detail, the careful calibration of observation and patience that had brought the situation to this point, a silent understanding that the reveal of her authority would ripple outward with clarity and inevitability. Each breath she took was a measured step, each glance a quiet assessment, each subtle adjustment of stance a silent message that she was fully present, fully aware, and entirely in command of the narrative as it approached its turning point. The faint whir of a distant printer, the soft scrape of a chair against the floor, the muted shuffle of footsteps combined with Monica's steady presence to create a suspended rhythm, a delicate interplay of observation, anticipation, and poised energy that filled the office with a quiet electricity, all converging toward the moment when control, patience, and preparation would culminate in a revelation of authority that could not be ignored. The air in the office carried a quiet intensity, each sound amplified in the stillness, from the soft hum of computers to the faint rustle of papers shifting under the light touch of a passing hand. Monica Hayes stood with deliberate composure, her hand resting lightly on the clasp of her briefcase, fingers brushing it with precision as if measuring the weight of the moment itself. Derek Collins, sensing a shift he could not name, adjusted his stance, a slight furrow of his brow betraying the unacknowledged uncertainty creeping into his perception of control. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting thin, linear shadows across the floor and walls, intersecting with the glow of monitors and the polished sheen of the tile, creating an intricate pattern of light and shadow that seemed to map the unspoken tension between presence and authority. Monica's gaze moved smoothly across the room, noting the positions of her colleagues, the angle of a chair slightly out of place, the subtle alignment of documents, all catalogued with meticulous attention as she assessed the flow of observation and influence within the shared space. Derek spoke again, his tone firm yet strained, attempting to assert the dominance he had assumed naturally belonged to him. Yet Monica's quiet steadiness absorbed the effort without disruption, each word bouncing off her calm exterior, leaving the room poised between expectation and revelation. Her hand adjusted the briefcase strap again, a small movement imbued with deliberate intention, signaling readiness and awareness, a silent assertion of her presence and preparation without drawing undue attention. Around them, colleagues navigated their work with a subtle precision, their steps and gestures contributing to a tapestry of observation, each movement echoing faintly against the walls and floors, layering tension into the atmosphere, a slow, deliberate anticipation of what was about to unfold. Monica allowed herself a brief internal acknowledgment of the carefully constructed balance she maintained, the precise calibration of attention, timing, and posture that positioned her to command attention and shift perception without a single overt act of confrontation. The gentle hum of electronics, the occasional click of a pen, and the soft shuffle of feet across tile formed a rhythm that underscored her controlled presence, each sound magnifying the contrast between calm authority and the rising tension in Derek's movements. She shifted her weight subtly, maintaining eye contact, projecting an aura of steady intelligence and quiet power, a reminder that presence, observation, and patience often wielded more influence than loud assertion. The office seemed to respond to her composure, the soft energy of anticipation wrapping the room in an invisible current, each observer unknowingly participating in the delicate interplay of awareness, patience, and control that defined Monica's strategic positioning. Every detail, the light, the sound, the movement, the stillness, was part of a carefully orchestrated stage, preparing for the moment when the subtle authority she held would emerge fully, unchallenged, undeniable, and perfectly timed to shift perception and establish her presence as the true measure of influence in the room. Monica Hayes shifted her weight subtly, the soft scrape of her shoes against the tile floor marking the passage of seconds as she maintained her composed stance, each gesture precise, measured, as if the entire room had slowed to accommodate the deliberate rhythm of her presence. Derek Collins, still focused on the briefcase, leaned slightly forward, his brows furrowed, the faint tension in his shoulders betraying an awareness he could not yet name, a creeping sense that the assumptions he carried might soon be challenged. The sunlight streaming through the blinds cast thin, linear patterns across the walls and floor, intersecting with the glow from monitors and polished surfaces, creating a complex web of light and shadow that seemed to echo the intricate dynamic unfolding between them. Monica's eyes swept across the office, noting every subtle movement, every micro-expression, the slight shuffle of a paper, the faint click of a keyboard, each sound absorbed into the mosaic of observation that she had built meticulously over the past weeks. Her hand rested lightly on the clasp of her briefcase, brushing it almost absent-mindedly yet with deliberate intention, a signal of readiness and confidence that radiated without a single spoken word. Derek spoke again, his voice attempting to command, each syllable carefully modulated to convey authority, yet Monica's calm exterior absorbed the effort, deflecting it with an invisible strength that rendered his assertions quietly ineffective. The colleagues nearby continued their tasks, yet even their mundane movements seemed to take on heightened significance, their awareness sharpened by the subtle tension in the room, an unconscious acknowledgment that the balance of influence had shifted imperceptibly. Monica allowed herself a brief, controlled inhale, steadying her focus, reinforcing the quiet but undeniable command she held over the space, each breath measured and deliberate, aligning with the rhythm of her poised presence. The faint hum of the ventilation system, the soft rustle of documents, and the distant clicks of office machinery formed an understated symphony, a backdrop against which the stillness of Monica's composure became increasingly prominent, each detail accentuating the control she exerted without overt action. She adjusted her stance slightly, aligning herself with the light from the window, allowing her shadow to extend along the floor in a subtle yet deliberate display of presence, a visual reminder that authority is often demonstrated in quiet, composed gestures rather than loud declarations. Every glance she directed, every minor shift of her posture, conveyed an unspoken message. Patience, observation, and preparation hold more power than hasty action, and that the moment when her insight would manifest fully was drawing near. Monica's mind cataloged every element of the room, every motion, every sound, assessing, recording, calculating the precise alignment of events and reactions that would set the stage for the next pivotal movement. The office air seemed to thicken with anticipation, an almost tangible tension wrapping around each observer, as if the room itself held its collective breath, awaiting the subtle yet decisive moment when the full measure of Monica's authority, patience, and strategic awareness would quietly and irrevocably assert itself, reshaping the perception of control within the space without a single word or overt act of confrontation. Monica Hayes took a slow, deliberate step back from her briefcase, the smooth leather cool beneath her fingers, as she allowed a subtle but deliberate reveal of the embossed badge tucked carefully inside. The office seemed to shift around her, the fluorescent lights casting long, angular shadows that intersected with the shafts of sunlight filtering through the blinds, highlighting the slight rise and fall of her chest as she inhaled, steady and calm. Derek Collins froze mid-step, his hand hovering uncertainly over the counter, eyes widening slightly as the realization began to register, a faint tremor of recognition disrupting the steady rhythm he had assumed he commanded. Colleagues who had been busy at their desks paused, some holding pens mid-air, others leaning forward slightly, the quiet movements amplifying the tension, each subtle gesture reflecting the ripple of acknowledgment that passed through the room. Monica's gaze swept over the office again, measuring, assessing, her eyes settling briefly on each face, noting expressions of surprise, curiosity, and quiet admiration, all while maintaining the controlled, unshakable composure that had defined her every movement up to this point. The hum of the air conditioning and the distant click of a keyboard became almost musical in their cadence, punctuating the charged silence that now wrapped the office in a palpable current of anticipation. Derek's voice wavered slightly, the authority he had relied on momentarily softened by the weight of Monica's revealed presence, as he adjusted his stance and attempted to regain the balance he had thought unchallenged. Monica allowed a faint, measured smile, subtle and composed, not directed in mockery, but in acknowledgment of the precise timing, the careful orchestration of observation, patience, and measured action that had led to this moment. Each movement she made now, even as slight as a shift of weight or the tilt of her head, carried authority, a silent command that the room could feel without words, a demonstration of power wielded through calm, awareness, and presence. The light from the window caught the edge of her briefcase, glinting softly, a visual marker of her role and the hidden depth of responsibility she carried, signaling clearly to all present that the quiet, attentive figure they had observed was now fully revealed in her capacity and authority. Derek took a cautious step back, his eyes locked on hers, a subtle nod of understanding, a recognition that the assumptions of control he had carried were no longer valid in the face of demonstrated insight and authority. Monica's hands rested lightly on the clasp, her posture unyielding, each breath measured, each subtle gesture resonating through the room, commanding attention without a single raised voice. Around them, colleagues resumed their tasks, but the rhythm had changed, the air charged with a sense of recalibration, the invisible current of respect, observation, and acknowledgment now flowing from her presence outward. Every detail, the patterns of light, the faint echoes of movement, the quiet hum of machinery, seemed to align with the shift in energy, underscoring the strategic precision with which Monica had maintained control, prepared for the moment when her authority would be fully recognized, undeniable, and respected by all present in the space. The atmosphere in the office seemed to shift almost imperceptibly, a quiet ripple moving through the air as Monica Hayes allowed herself a subtle, controlled smile, acknowledging the precise moment when her presence had altered the perception of everyone in the room. The light from the blinds caught the polished surfaces at a sharp angle, creating thin, elongated patterns across the floor that seemed to stretch toward Derek Collins, drawing his attention in a way that emphasized the recalibration of authority. Monica's hand rested lightly on the briefcase, fingers brushing the smooth leather in a deliberate, measured manner, signaling readiness and control without any overt motion. Derek's posture shifted, a slight hesitation in his step, a pause that betrayed his uncertainty and awareness that the assumptions of dominance he had carried moments ago no longer applied in the same way. Around them, colleagues resumed their tasks, but the rhythm had subtly changed, the quiet hum of the office now underscored by a sense of acknowledgment, a silent understanding that Monica's revealed position carried weight that could not be ignored. Each movement of her eyes, sweeping across the room to note reactions and expressions, conveyed an unspoken command, a reminder that observation and patience often wield more influence than force or volume, and that the balance of power had quietly shifted in her favor. The soft click of a keyboard, the rustle of papers, and the muted shuffle of footsteps created an understated cadence, forming a backdrop against which Monica's composed presence resonated, each detail amplifying the recognition of her authority. Derek adjusted his stance, attempting to regain composure, yet his voice carried a trace of hesitation, the words measured but lacking the unchallenged weight they once held, each syllable a subtle acknowledgment of the quiet control Monica now exerted. Monica's gaze moved deliberately from the briefcase to the surrounding office, noting the alignment of desks, the posture of coworkers, and the positioning of monitors, cataloging each element as part of an intricate internal map of observation and situational awareness that underscored her preparation and strategic patience. She allowed herself a controlled breath, the rise and fall of her chest steady, reinforcing the calm authority she projected, each subtle gesture and motion harmonizing with the ambient sounds and visual cues to create a cohesive, commanding presence. The sunlight shifted slightly, the patterns on the floor altering imperceptibly, yet Monica's attention remained keen, her mind integrating every detail, every movement, every micro-expression into a cohesive understanding of the dynamics at play, a silent preparation for the next measured step. Around her, the office seemed to hold a collective pause, the hum of equipment and quiet activity now threaded with a recognition of the subtle, deliberate power she maintained, an authority conveyed without overt action, established through precision, observation, and the quiet patience that had brought the situation to this pivotal moment. Every element of the environment, the light, the sound, the spatial relationships, the subtle reactions of others, was part of a delicate interplay that Monica had carefully navigated, and with each passing second, the acknowledgment of her presence deepened, preparing the ground for the final, inevitable shift in perception that would solidify her role as the measure of influence and command within the space. Monica Hayes straightened fully, the weight of the briefcase in her hands grounding her as the subtle hum of the office shifted, each sound amplified by the quiet intensity of the room. Derek Collins, finally registering the full scope of her revealed position, stepped back slightly, his expression a mixture of surprise and measured respect, the air between them thick with the acknowledgment of a power that had been quietly, steadily, and deliberately asserted. The sunlight through the blinds glinted off polished surfaces, drawing thin, linear highlights across the floor and the edges of furniture, subtly illuminating the controlled posture and calm authority that Monica maintained, every detail deliberate and purposeful. Around them, colleagues paused briefly in their tasks, the soft shuffle of papers, the muted tapping of keyboards, and the quiet murmur of distant conversation all seeming to momentarily harmonize with the shift in dynamics, creating an almost imperceptible cadence of acknowledgment that flowed through the space. Monica's eyes scanned the room, observing the reactions, the subtle shifts in posture, the tightening of grips on pens and mouse devices, the slight catch of breath or pause in movement that signaled recognition, not just of her role, but of the strategic patience and insight she had exercised to reach this moment. Her hands rested lightly on the clasp of her briefcase, brushing the smooth leather with deliberate control, a tactile confirmation of readiness and authority, and she allowed herself a small, quiet exhale, the rhythm steady and measured, projecting calm and focus outward into the charged atmosphere. Derek's voice, when it emerged, carried a different weight, tempered by awareness, his words slower, more deliberate, reflecting the subtle recalibration of influence and understanding that had occurred in silence until now. Monica's gaze did not waver, each blink and movement precise, conveying a quiet command over the situation, a reassurance that her presence and role were understood and acknowledged without need for raised voices or overt demonstration. The air seemed to thicken, filled with the collective breath of observers attuned, consciously or unconsciously, to the shift in balance, every sound, shadow, and movement reinforcing the quiet yet undeniable authority she exercised. The faint hum of ventilation, the soft clicks of keyboards, and the distant echo of footsteps formed a backdrop that accentuated the weight of composed presence, the interplay of patience, observation, and timing that Monica had meticulously maintained, and now, in this culmination, each element converged to create a clear, undeniable recognition of her influence. Her posture remained upright, her shoulders squared yet relaxed, radiating a controlled energy that suggested competence, insight, and the certainty that the subtle orchestration of observation and timing had achieved its intended effect. Every detail of the room, the shifting light, the faint sounds, the spatial awareness, and the reactions of those around her, interacted to create a complete acknowledgment of Monica Hayes as the embodiment of strategic authority and quiet command, a presence that had altered perception and subtly reshaped the environment without a single overt action, a testament to the power of patience, precision, and deliberate control fully realized.